fundraising drives in order to keep our organization's presence alive and well on the internet. But first, I want to thank everyone who pays their annual memberships through our automatic online system. Your support is vital and provides us with important funds to keep the CMPS afloat. This year, we will be implementing several changes to our online system, several to save money and lower our annual expenses, and another to better our discussion platform. Our goal this year is $2,000, and I hope we can reach that goal. Whatever amount you can donate, it is greatly appreciated and needed. Your membership and donations are vital to keeping our online community of critical thinkers alive and well.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Saturday session of John Chappell Natural Philosophy Science. So if you just hold on a moment, I'll check my sound's coming out all right. So hello, and welcome back. So my sound seems to be working okay. And so today's exciting session is more complaining about Einstein's relativity, and it's sort of a carry on from the challenge to relativity, which was presented a couple of the Saturday before last. So I looked into why are there people still believing in Einstein's relativity, contrasted into people who think it's wrong. So, and the best I can determine is there are two main philosophical approaches to Einstein's relativity. From the mainstream perspective, Einstein's relativity is considered correct. Those who reject Einstein's relativity, however, typically work from a fundamentally different philosophical framework. The core difference seems to lie in how each philosophy treats metaphysics. So we've got no common ground to talking among those who support relativity and those who think relativity is wrong. They're talking from totally different philosophical points of view. So, in case you've forgotten, as I've dealt with in other talks, metaphysics is the branch of philosophy that deals with the first principles of things, including abstract concepts such as being, knowing, identity, time, and space. And one problem in the mainstream community is that they often think they don't have metaphysics. And when they do have metaphysical beliefs, but they often think they don't have many metaphysical beliefs. So it's that's a big stumbling block with trying to talk to the mainstream. You can't sort out the problems of the metaphysics if they don't believe they don't believe it exists. So they have their metaphysics and tend to want to ignore other systems of metaphysics. So you can't address the issue of their philosophy being wrong because they don't want to talk about it. And they also believe they don't have that philosophy. They think they're being scientific or whatever, and they think they're above talking about metaphysics when actually they do have a metaphysical belief. And so we've got no common ground with talking to them. For the people who want to say relativity is wrong, they're sort of like dogmatically stuck in their philosophy, and they can't see any reason for not carrying on believing relativity is correct when it isn't. It's just their way they're thinking is wrong. So, and also I should point out one of the big problems with metaphysics is it covers lots of other things, not just physics. So I'm talking about the metaphysics which applies to physics, not the other metaphysics, because metaphysics applies to lots of things like, well, does God exist, and etc., etc., etc. And it's a lot, oh yeah, life after death and all that sort of thing. So it gets too deep. Metaphysics, when it goes into our areas, the physics community tends to want to ignore that sort of thing. So maybe when they're thinking of metaphysics, they're thinking about those things like God. They don't want to talk about God really, except when they want to write a book and make it popular to the general public. Then maybe they'll mention God. So that's, I think, Stephen Hawking does. He talks about God and that just so he can sell more of his books. Anyway, next slide. So this is the title of the talk. After all that, it's intuitionism versus formalism in relativity. And so there's basically these two philosophical points of view of how you can look at Einstein's relativity. So I've given the game away. We're talking about the philosophy of intuitionism versus the philosophy of formalism. And how you want to look at Einstein's relativity then depends upon your philosophical point of view, which is roughly these two categories. Intuition can be, there's not, say, one definite version of that, and formalism, there's not one definite version of that, but it's roughly what it is. You roughly look from an intuitionist philosophical point of view at relativity, or you can look at a formalist point of view of Einstein's relativity. So it's a disagreement of how they're looking at relativity. It's roughly covered by these two different types of philosophy. Next, so I'm picking up again on the theme that from different points of view, that is from different philosophies, Einstein's relativity can look wrong or right. And it's roughly formalism and intuition. Roughly, that's the way it can be looked at. Einstein's relativity is about observing things from different points of view, and the theory or theories, if you special relativity and general relativity, which can be thought of as two theories, or you could think of it as combined into one theory of relativity, can themselves be viewed as right from a certain point of view, i.e., certain philosophical point of view, and from another point of view. So now I give a quote from Star Wars, as I've given before. So this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he's lied to the hero, and he's trying to excuse the lie as it's true from a different point of view. So from the normal point of view, Obi-Wan Kenobi has lied, and Obi-Wan Kenobi is trying to say, oh, but I didn't tell a lie. From another point of view, I was telling the truth. So you've got a relativity of different points of view, which is kind of like, oh, if you look at it from one philosophical point of view, relativity is wrong. If you look at it from another philosophical point of view, then it's right. So you've got a split. And so related to that is another quote. I think it's from Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't think it's a made up quote. I think it's really what you're saying. You'll find that many of the things we cling to depend greatly upon your point of view. So many things you believe, it's only because you've got a certain point of view that makes that true, and that makes it true to you, but it might not be true from a different point of view, a different philosophy. So most of our truths are, so say, not absolute, they're sort of relative. So what I'm going to do now is to struggle with looking at relativity from different philosophical points of view. And we're looking at Einstein relativity from an intuitivist versus formalist point of view. There are the philosophies I've tried to explain that it's roughly an intuitive type philosophy versus a formalist type of philosophy, and you've got various variations of it. And so the subject is too hard for me to just go into just from myself, and so I've relied on artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, to help me with this. And in my point of view, it's good at collecting the relevant information upon this subject. So I'm just getting my cup of tea come in. Thank you. So this is what ChatGPT is going to say about formalism versus intuitionism. So I will pause for a minute, and I want to show a video. So here we go. Remove that one. Add to stage. Cool. So this is a video, and I'm going to be getting to it. And it's another thing about Einstein's relativity that I want to complain about, and it's to do with relativistic mass. So I'll be getting to this issue of complaining about this. So where is it? So I got to play it, and I hope I got to turn my sound off and play it.
No doubt, Albert Einstein makes some very mind-blowing predictions. Clocks run at different rates, objects shrink, and things can't go faster than light. And all of these things are absolutely true. Relativity has been thoroughly tested, and there is no credible criticism of the theory, although you wouldn't know it from the piles of unsolicited correspondence I get on the subject. So let's talk about that last one, the idea that you can't go faster than the speed of light. This is a well-demonstrated fact. So why is it true? If you ask a well-educated scientific layperson, they will tell you that it's because the mass of an object increases as the velocity increases. In fact, you'll hear this said by people with physics degrees. There's only one thing. It's just not true. Now, I realize that me saying that is going to confuse a lot of you, like this guy here, for example. So what's going on? Why is it that even some physicists will say that the mass of an object increases as the speed increases? Heck, why is it that even I have said that upon occasion? Shh, don't tell anyone. The reason is a combination of how scientists teach relativity and our intuition at low velocity. I'm going to explain it to you first conceptually and then show just a little math for the physics-minded viewer. So it starts with the concept of inertia. Inertia is the property of matter which resists changes in motion. Basically, it's equivalent to the idea that I can push this toy car easily, but this much bigger car is harder to push. And at low speeds, inertia is equivalent to mass. At very high speeds, this is no longer true. Mass and inertia are no longer the same.
Video back on. So there's a great deal I would like to complain about in that video, and it's by Don Lincoln, who's a physicist, and he's I think is at Fermi Lab, and that was the title at the beginning. And so he knows what he's talking about. He's an expert on physics, and he's telling you now that mass does not increase with velocity. And that's the concept of relativistic mass, which he's discarding. And there's a lot in that video which I would complain about on just picking up on that one issue. And so, first of all, if you want to see more, you should go to his video and see the rest of it. But picking up on the issue of relativistic mass, when I was taught physics, we had relativistic mass being taught to us, and now suddenly he's wanting to change everything, and it's not supposed to be relativistic mass. It was just a mistake to say there was relativistic mass in special relativity, and that is changing what special relativity is, and in my view. And you can argue with people who believe in special relativity and say, no, it's not really a change, it's just an improvement or something like that. It's just a correction or whatever. But basically, it's changing the theory of special relativity. And making a change like that, I call it moving goalposts. So there's a lot of things in what these physicists say about relativity and so forth. And what they're doing is just moving goalposts. They're making changes. They're telling you one thing one moment, and then later they're telling you something else. So this is basically one of the big things I complain about. They just keep changing what they're saying, and then they pretend that, oh, there's no change really. It's just a correction or slight improvement. But no, in my view, it is a fundamental big change. So he what I complain about there, he's making a fundamental big change in the understanding of special relativity, and it goes completely against what I was taught as special relativity. So first of all, that's my complaint about that. And now I'm getting on to philosophy. So he's going by a philosophy which I totally disagree with, and I can only pick up from, say, ChatGPT and places like that, a rough idea of what that philosophy is. So I'm adding my talk back now onto the stage, and I'll read it again to you. So it's what I'm narrowing it down to is the difference between a philosophical point of view of formalism versus a philosophical point of view of intuitism. And so these basic ideas come from the foundations of mathematics, but they map meaningfully onto physics, especially relativity, because they reflect how we conceive mathematical constructs in relation to reality. So first of all, one of the big issues with us people who complain about how modern physics has gone, we complain that it's become too mathematical. And so it seems to be, I take it, that Einstein brought this into it. That it was Einstein's way of doing things, where physics suddenly became mathematical. And so suddenly you've got into this idea of physics being more mathematical. Well, how do you actually look at that mathematics? And how the way you look at how you look at that mathematics comes from a philosophy. And so you've got two different philosophies of how to look at mathematics. You've got the formalism way of looking at mathematics, or you've got the intuitionist way of looking at mathematics. So suddenly this gets introduced into physics. This wasn't, in my view, really in physics before Einstein. Einstein brought this in. The way that Einstein was thinking about things brought this in. I don't think he explicitly mentioned this in his writings, but really what he was doing was creating philosophical confusion as to what he was talking about. Anyway, so this is the definition of what these philosophies are. Formalist philosophy is mathematics and physics are symbolic systems governed by internally consistent rules, and where you got truth's consistency within the system. Well, the intuitionist way of looking at things is mathematics, and by extension now physics, must be grounded in constructive human intuition of time, space, and continuity. Truth is what can be constructed or intuited. So it's Einstein. He's come in and he's completely messed up our understanding of space and time and everything else. So suddenly you've got this problem of how you're going to look at those things from a philosophical point of view, and it's in the mathematics it first comes in. So how are you going to look at the mathematics? You're looking at space and so time, so forth. how are you now looking at the philosophy of that? And Einstein, in my view, has totally messed it up. So, ChatGPT AI says, in physics, Einstein's relativity, especially special relativity, is often read as a formalist revolution. So you suddenly, this is the big philosophical change which is taking place when Einstein brings in his special relativity. He's making this change to a formalist philosophy. And that's not usually explicitly stated when physics students are taught physics. That suddenly, the philosophy that the physics community is going by is formalism. That's not explicitly stated. And that's the revolution that Einstein brought in with philosophy. He's into physics. He brought in formalism, or formalism type philosophy. And so in that, space and time are no longer intuitive givens, but variables defined only by the formal structure of the theory. So that's what Einstein's philosophical revolution has been when it goes to physics, because he's messing around with space and time. Suddenly, the philosophy has changed. You've suddenly got a formalism philosophy, and that's where you got all the things like the Lorentz transformations and all that. How you're supposed to interpret those things, well, you're supposed to now interpret it by a formalism type philosophy, according to the mess that Einstein's making. So, from a formalist standpoint, the mathematical structure, which is the Minkowski space-time and the Lorentz transformations, hopefully you're familiar with from my other talks where I've complained about these things a lot, and that defines what is physically real. Simultaneity, distance, and duration are not pre-given intuitions, but operational definitions derived from the formal system of measurement and synchronization rules. So all those concepts are suddenly changed by Einstein. If you doing physics before Einstein, you had a different way of dealing with those things. Suddenly Einstein wants you to deal with them differently. And so the criterion for truth is internal consistency and empirical adequacy. Not correspondence to a deeper metaphysical or intuitive order. So when he's talking about metaphysical, i.e. you're messing up the metaphysics, Einstein's come along and 1905 onwards, he's messed up the metaphysics. You had a certain metaphysics before Einstein, and he's coming along and suddenly, we're going to change all that. We're going to make a mess of it. Einstein's 1905 approach was largely operationalist, formalist. So an operationalist is another type of philosophy, and it is related to formalism. So this is where the talking about the philosophy, it's sort of like there are lots of different philosophies, and there are slight variations. So in my view, operationalism is a slight variation of formalism, and the physical meaning arises from measurement procedures, not from intuition of an underlying reality. So suddenly you're throwing away the intuition, which you have about space and time and so forth, in the context of Newtonian physics, and you're throwing that away, and Einstein's wanting to bring something else in. And so Einstein's relativity from an intuitionist perspective is an intuitionist, that's in contrast to the formalist, demands that all mathematical and physical concepts must remain grounded in our constructed temporal and spatial intuition. And the formalist, which is going by Einstein, he's brought in, he's thrown all that away, he's thrown away all your grounding in understanding those concepts and wants to replace it by something else. And that applied to relativity, and intuitionist critique would say it's the loss of intuitive time. Einstein's relativity severs the link between our direct intuition of temporal flow and physical time, i.e. we've got physics before Einstein, Newtonian physics, and we had an intuitive understanding of what these things were, and Einstein's throwing that away. And next is the block universe of Minkowski space-time contradicts the lived intuition of becoming, change, and succession. So the mathematics from Minkowski, that is thrown away what we commonly know as our intuition of those things. Thus, time in special relativity is formally defined but intuitively meaningless. So you've got the mathematics of special relativity, you've got these things formally defined the formalist way, but if you've got intuition about what space-time and so forth are, suddenly it all becomes meaningless from the Newtonian physics. So the construction of simultaneity. For an intuitionist, simultaneity must be constructed of immediate temporal awareness, not imposed by formal synchronization conventions. And that's what Einstein's doing. He's imposing a synchronization convention. So that's totally messing up your understanding of physics from an intuitive point of view. And so Einstein's definition, which comes via the light signals, is a symbolic convention, not an intuitive construction. And so Einstein's throwing away all the construction made in physics by Newton and those people before him, before Newton, and he's trying to change things. And next is continuity and geometry. Intuitionism regards geometric spaces arising from continuous extension intuitive directly, while Minkowski space-time, which is coming from special relativity, being a mathematical manifold defined axiomatically, abstracts away from the intuitive continuity of motion and causality. Next is the physical meaning. The intuitive wants constructive procedures that connect symbols to physical acts of measurement or perception. Einstein's relativity, once it abandons the ether, and I've done a lot on complaining about the ether being abandoned. It shouldn't have been abandoned, but from an intuitive point of view, you should keep it. But from a formalist point of view, which seems to be what the mainstream is going by, let's just abandon it, which is nonsense. They're just making a nonsense by abandoning it. But that's their philosophy. It no longer provides a constructive medium for propagation if you abandon it. Thus, it loses intuitive grounding. So your whole understanding of a lot of physics gets messed up when you abandon the ether if you're trying to look at physics from an intuitive philosophy. And so the consequences of these two attitudes, I'll just have a cup of tea a minute. So the formalist understanding is space-time geometry is physical reality. And from an intuitive understanding, space-time is a formal representation of relations between physical processes, not an ontological substance. So it's not the nature of things to have space-time according to intuitives. And that says the role of intuition. From a formalist point of view, it's irrelevant. But from an intuitive point of view, it's foundational. Concepts must arise from lived temporal and spatial experience. But sort of like formalist is going to abandon all that. Next is about simultaneity, and that is defined operationally by light signal conventions by the formalist, while the intuitive says, it's constructed from pre-formal awareness of succession, not subject to arbitrary conventions. So that's how the formalist is messing up simultaneity. He's suddenly thrown away the intuitive way of looking at that. And that's where you bring in relative simultaneity instead of absolute simultaneity, and that's a total mess when the formalist is doing that. Next is the attitude towards ether, and the formalist is discarding it as fiction, while the intuitive it's potentially a necessary intuitive substrate for motion and causation. So to an intuitive, ether is vitally important to help you to understand what's going on, but a formalist is going to abandon it. Now, the view of time, it's formalist is going to say it's relational and it's coordinate dependent and symmetric. Well, intuitive is going, it's absolute, flowing, asymmetrical, grounded in intuition of becoming. So that is roughly the point of views of things. So the intuitive type philosophy seems to be the type of philosophy that many of us people who think Einstein's relativity is wrong go by. And in that type of philosophy, Einstein's relativity is wrong. But formalist, if the mainstream seems to be going by the formalist philosophy, and from that type of philosophy, Einstein's relativity is correct. So you've got the big split here. Formalist, Einstein relativity, yes, it's good. Intuitive philosophy, no, it's wrong. Next, it's the broader philosophical states, and the formalist relativity leads to the geometrization of physics and the block universe, and that's a tenseless ontology nature of things. And the intuitive reinterpretation leads towards neo-Lorentzian or process-based models where absolute simultaneity and temporal becoming are real and the geometry is only descriptive. So that seems to be one of the big breaks here from those people who think Einstein's relativity is wrong. Most of them are going by a Lorentzian type theory, and they're thinking what special relativity is saying is wrong. And from a formalist view of relativity, no, special relativity is correct, and they're discarding looking at it from a Lorentzian type theory. Thus, an intuitive physicist would regard Einstein's relativity as an excellent formal calculus, but not a faithful description of how nature is constructed in time. Did I say that? Thus, an intuitive. Did I say get it wrong? Intuitive. From the point of view of intuitive philosophy, Einstein's relativity, though it's mathematically okay, it's not what the nature of physics is really about. It's not really describing the nature of things. So, next. So the aspect of thing, ontology is the nature of things. Formalist view is geometry is real, ether is unnecessary. Intuitive point of view is geometry is symbolic and underlying medium or process is needed. So ether is necessary from an intuitive philosophy. Time is symmetric, coordinate dependent, according to formalist, and from an intuitive point of view, no, it's not. No, it's asymmetrical, experiential, and constructive. So these philosophies are disagreeing about the fundamental things. And on simultaneity, formalists can define it by light signal convention, and intuitives disagrees. It must be intuitively or physically grounded. And so the aim of theory from a formalist point of view is to have internal consistency and empirical success. And intuitivist disagrees. Intuitivist point of view says the theory must be constructive intentionality and grounded into intuition. And the stance then is from the formalist is going to be operational and formal, and the stance from the intuitivist is going to be constructed and phenomenological. So it's total disagreement as to how you're philosophically looking at Einstein's relativity. From a formalist point of view, Einstein's relativity is lovely. It's all very beautiful, based upon all these beliefs about what geometry is and having ether is unnecessary. Einstein's relativity is lovely and beautiful. And from an intuitive point of view, looking at Einstein's relativity, it's all wrong. It's all wrong. It's all done it all wrong. Everything's done wrong. And so I think that's big fundamental difference between us who believe Einstein's relativity was wrong with those who believe Einstein's relativity is right, because they're looking at it from a formalist philosophy while we're looking at it from an intuitive type philosophy. So AI says with ChatGPT, if you want an intuitive reinterpretation of relativity, then you're going to bring back the ether with a Lorentzian type of theory, and you're going to have constructive simultaneity. And so in contrast to that, formalist is going to look at it from a different point of view, and it's going to not accept that Lorentzian type of way of doing things. So I want to know if either of these point of views consider Einstein relativity as wrong. ChatGPT answering that question. The answer depends on what one means by wrong. Because I asked that question to ChatGPT, and straight away it wants to query the meaning of the word wrong. What does the word wrong mean? It's trying to bluff you out, on an intuitive understanding, we know what wrong means. So I've asked it, is Einstein's relativity wrong? And it immediately wants to bluff it and query, what does the word wrong mean? And so what wrong means, it means different things from different philosophies. This is why you're getting the bluff from ChatGPT. It wants to say, wrong means something different from a different different things from a different philosophy. And it's saying both the formalist and intuitive perceptives can accept the empirical success of Einstein's relativity while disagreeing about its meaning, validity, or truth status in very different senses. So hold on a minute, I'll check things. Am I having any comments here? First comment I got here is why complain about theory changes. Well, I complain about theory changes is because, in my view, changing it is changing the theory, and you've got one theory one moment, and you're going to change it to another theory. As another comment is why Einstein's theories included in the science are supposed to have been proven in 1919. Another comment, who cares what wrong means? Well, a theory can be wrong, an experiment can be wrong, so it's important to physics to know when you replace a theory with another theory. Okay, so the formalist view is relativity is not wrong, it's complete and self-consistent. So that is that type of point of view, and you're quite happy with Einstein's relativity because it's from your way of looking at things, it's correct. From a formalist standpoint, physics is a system of mathematical relations between observables. Einstein's relativity is perfectly valid formal system because it's logically consistent with its postulates. It makes accurate empirical predictions. It provides complete formal description of measurable quantities. Anyway, in my point of view, they're just bodging the mathematics to make it fit experiments. But ChatGPT is going to say, "Oh, yeah, it's lovely." ChatGPT is trying to support the mainstream point of view. Anyway, thus formalist physicists, including Einstein in his mature post-1915 period. So Einstein is bringing in a formalist type of philosophy, would say relativity cannot be wrong in any deeper sense because truth is defined internally by the consistency and predictive success of the system. So from this formalist type of view, Einstein's relativity cannot be wrong. It's true pretty much by definition based upon their philosophy, and they just change their theory a bit and they still believe it's the same theory. Even if relativity contradicts intuition or feels metaphysically unsatisfying, the formalist shrugs, doesn't pay any attention to it. They just consider it irrelevant, and they believe that intuition is not a criterion of truth. So they're just going to totally ignore the intuitive philosophy type of view. For the formalist, Einstein's relativity is not wrong. It's true by construction within the formal system and experimentally verified. So basically, they're believing from that philosophy that Einstein's relativity is true by definition to a large extent. They've got things wrong. So often they accept they got things wrong, but they just amend it and they treat the whole framework structure of Einstein's relativity as still being correct, even though they're making small amendments to it. Whereas the intuitive view, relativity is not false but inadequate. And I'm a bit stronger in my intuitive point of view, and I think relativity is wrong to a large extent. And so I'd say it's false to a large extent. But anyway, going with what ChatGPT wants to put onto things. According to that, ChatGPT, the intuitist, uses a different criterion of truth. For them, truth must be constructively and intuitively grounded in our direct experience of time, motion, and causality. So while intuitists generally accept that Einstein's relativity makes correct predictions, they regard its foundations as incomplete or distorted because it breaks with intuitive temporal order, no absolute time, no real simultaneity. It defines geometry in a way detached from our intuitive sense of spatial continuity. It replaces causally intelligible processes, e.g. ether propagation and so forth, with formal rules, and those formal rules don't make sense because you've discarded either. It suppresses metaphysical intelligibility in favor of symbolic calculability. So it's become metaphysically unintelligible from an intuitive point of view. But that doesn't matter to a formalist. They ignore the metaphysics, which shows it's unintelligible. So therefore, as intuitives might say, relativity is not empirically wrong, but conceptually false. It misrepresents how the world is constructed in time. That is, it's formally correct, but metaphysically inverted, i.e. metaphysically messed up. It describes appearances as measured by rods and clocks, but not real processes as they occur in absolute time. So an intuitism from this point of view is still going by absolute time, even though from a formalist point of view, they're sort of like rejecting that. And so what I pick up on is it conceptually false. I would think it is another way of saying wrong. So ChatGPT is still trying to say the mainstream is correct. And so rather than blatantly coming out saying, oh, Einstein's relativity is wrong, it's going to come up with these trick words about trying to tone it down a bit. Thus, anyway, go back to that. Thus, intuition is tending to say Einstein's relativity is wrong, which is aligning a bit with the critics of relativity point of view, while formalists tended to be a supporter of Einstein relativity point of view. If you want to believe in Einstein's relativity, you need to have a type of formalist philosophy. Next page. And so ChatGPT is still waffling on about what does wrong mean, and wrongness can depend on what kind of truth you mean. So you've got these different types of truth. You've got empirical truth, formal truth, and ontological truth, and epistological meaning. So formalist criterion and an intuitive criterion, they are different upon truth issues. And so you could read through that as well. You confuse yourself as what is true anymore. But basically, bringing in Einstein's relativity, it has got rid of the idea of an absolute truth. You've got relative truth. So from a formalist point of view, you got truth relative to that formalist point of view, or you got from an intuitive point of view, you got truth relative to their point of view. So Einstein's totally messed up truth. You don't even have truth agreement about what's true between these two different types of philosophy. So ChatGPT says the formula says relativity is true by definition. It works. And so it's a point of view where Einstein relativity is considered true. So that completely blocks you. If you think Einstein's relativity is wrong, well, the people who believe in it, if they go and buy a formalist point of view, they think it's true. They think it's true by definition. So that you've got nothing. You've got nothing you can do against such a person. They've already blocked your point of view off. They don't consider that there's another way of looking at Einstein's relativity. They're not open-minded, they're closed-minded. They believe in Einstein's relativity no matter what. Anyway, ChatGPT carries on, says the intuitor says about relativity, it works, but it describes only the shadows of reality, not the real process. So it's just saying from an intuitor's point of view that relativity is wrong. That's what I interpret as meaning, but trying to say it in a polite way. So this is the perspective you got the formalist perspective and the intuitor's perspective, and in formalist perspective, is Einstein's relativity wrong? The answer is no. And from the intuitor's perspective, the answer is partially. Einstein's relativity is partially wrong, and it's pointing out Einstein's relativity is formally correct, but conceptually or ontologically false. And that's basically the metaphysics. It's saying that the metaphysics of Einstein's relativity is wrong. It's another point of view as a metaphysical realist, and e.g. Lorentzian. And if you're believing in Lorentz theory, then you're saying, yes, Einstein's relativity is wrong. It denies absolute simultaneity or the ether. So by denying these metaphysical things, that makes Einstein's relativity wrong. So in short, formalists see relativity as a correct formal description of nature, while intuitors see relativity as a mistaken reconstruction of how nature really is, though it works predictively. So that means, once again, that from an intuitor's point of view, Einstein's relativity has messed up metaphysics. And so, so intuitism considers Einstein relativity as wrong, but wrong in a rather weak way. And that's the way that ChatGPT is trying to present it. It's still trying to uphold the mainstream point of view. So I wanted to see if there's a better in philosophy than intuition for saying that Einstein's relativity is wrong. So ask what philosophy considers Einstein relativity wrong. So ChatGPT tries to defend itself by confusing what is meant by wrong. And so the main divide is internal versus external realism. What counts as truth? A formalist or operationalist that considers internal consistency and empirical adequacy as the truth. And so the stance on relativity, Einstein's relativity, is it's right. While an intuitist counts truth as constructed grounding in lived time and causality. And so relativity Einstein's relativity is conceptually inaccurate, but not numerically wrong. And so it's wrong to a large extent in the understanding of metaphysics. Whereas the metaphysical realist, Lorentzian or Neo-Newtonian, what counts as truth is that there exists an objective physical substratum, which is the ether, absolute time, and so forth, behind appearances. And so, from that point of view, Einstein's relativity is physically wrong. It misrepresents what's really happening. So it's only the third group, the metaphysical realist, with the Lorentz and Neo-Lorentz and so forth, the intuitists and process philosophers, and some modern critics actually consider Einstein's relativity wrong. and that's in the nature of things sense. And so there's three kinds of wrongness, and there's empirical wrongness, and who asserts that Einstein's relativity is empirically wrong? Almost no one. Most people saying it matches predictions, but really you need to take into account that relativity only deals with a certain range of experiments, and other experiments and observations are outside of what it deals with, i.e. main example being quantum physics. Quantum physics is dealing with things which is not necessarily what relativity can deal with. And that's the problem of trying to combine relativity and quantum physics. You've got a crossover. The next one is conceptual wrongness, and so it's conceptually wrong according to the intuitionists, and according to that, the theory misrepresents the meaning of time and causality. Next one is the ontological wrongness, as the nature of things, and the Lorentzian realists and the ether theorists say it's wrong. It's theory's description of space-time is not what's physically real. And so when you ask what perspective considers relativity wrong, the answer is those that hold truth must correspond to a mind-dependent, causally intelligible reality, and not just to measurement relations. So a formalist is just going to go by what their formal construction, which is based on measurement, and they're not looking at making the metaphysics making sense. So it goes on to split things down further. You've got the formalists, the intuitists, the Lorentzian realists, and you got the Bergson, who's a philosopher, and you got people who follow his sort of like philosophy. And then you got the neo-Newtonian realists, and you got the instrumentalists, and they're different ways of looking at truth. So the perspective that consider Einstein's relativity wrong, not just limited but false in its interpretation of reality, are those that require 1, a real flowing absolute time, 2, an ontologically preferred frame, this is ether or substratum, and 3, a causal constructive account of light propagation and clock behavior. And that includes the people who go by Lorentzian ether realism and the Bergson philosophy of intuition, Whitehead in his process metaphysics, and a certain modern neo-Lorentzian or neo-Newtonian models that reproduce special relativity predictions without Einstein's metaphysics. So, bearing in mind Star Wars quote game, so what I told you was true from a certain point of view. So their point of views where Einstein's relativity is wrong. So when Einstein's relativity is taught to students, why isn't this pointed out to them? ? They're missing out a lot of things. You do a physics course and they're going to miss out philosophy. And you get taught special ed to general ed to, and so forth, and you're not being told, oh, there's philosophical points of view which consider what you're being taught is a load of nonsense. So why is that not explicitly pointing out what point of view you need to adopt to believe Einstein relativity without dismissing it wrong? So when the students are being taught all this stuff, they're not being told, oh, the philosophy that you need to believe in is formalism. But actually it is. You need to believe in that. You need to believe in that philosophical point of view to accept what you're being taught. That they're missing out telling you that they're brainwashing you into believing formalism. Things, however, get worse. Bear in mind, all these changes of philosophies as to how to deal with physics came from this person. It's almost like he's taking the mickey out of us. According to ChatGPT, mainstream physics took it as implicit from him that had to change their philosophy. So you had philosophy of physics under the Newtonian physics way of doing things, and then suddenly Einstein comes along And in order to make sense of what he's doing, you've got to change your philosophy. And the mainstream physics community seems to have done that. He did not explicitly ask for the change. Einstein didn't say, "Oh, change your philosophy." But in order to make sense of his version of physics, the physics community, had to change their philosophy. Next. Right. Where it gets worse is you can ask ChatGPT questions and it will give you different answers. So, for instance, I asked ChatGPT, "Is there relativistic mass?" and it said no. The next time I asked it, it said yes. So, there we go. Back to that video. Come back down. I'll remind you of the video. I'll put that video back on again. Oh. So I'll just replay this video to remind you.
Albert Einstein's theory of special relativity makes some very mind-blowing predictions. Clocks run at different rates, objects shrink, and things can't go faster than light. And all of these things are absolutely true. Relativity has been thoroughly tested, and there is no credible criticism of the theory, although you wouldn't know it from the piles of unsolicited correspondence I get on the subject. So let's talk about that last one, the idea that you can't go faster than the speed of light. This is a well-demonstrated fact. So why is it true? If you ask a well-educated scientific layperson, they will tell you that it's because the mass of an object increases as the velocity increases. In fact, you'll hear this said by people with physics degrees. There's only one thing. It's just not true. Now, I realize that me saying that is going to confuse a lot of you, like this guy here, for example. So what's going on? Why is it that even some physicist will say that the mass of an object increases as the speed increases? Heck, why is it that even I have said that upon occasion? Shh, don't tell anyone. The reason is a combination of
So this guy Don Lincoln, he admits that he was saying that this mass increases with velocity at one time, and now suddenly he's changed his mind about it, and he thinks it doesn't. So from a philosophical point of view, he's just talking nonsense. From my perspective, what he's saying, he's just talking nonsense. He's changed the theory. Whereas from his point of view, it's probably a formalist type of philosophy he's working from. And from his point of view, he's not wrong. He's correct. So from my philosophical point of view, he's just talking a little nonsense. And he doesn't even realize he's talking nonsense. So add back to stage my talk. There we go. Brilliant. And I make it bigger. So when ChatGPT said there's no relativistic mass, it was answering that question from a mainstream point of view. And I think that's probably what a Don Lincoln point of view is. He's working from that sort of formalist mainstream point of view. And ChatGPT was answering no, in it to be in agreement with that point of view. But after I talked to it for a while, it decided to adopt my point of view, and it said, and it changed its mind. In order to conform with my point of view, it said, yes, there was relativistic mass. So you've got this big split in philosophy. You've got the mainstream philosophy point of view, and the answer is no. But from different philosophy, the answer is yes. And ChatGPT will suddenly flip over between different points of view. It's trying to, when you talk to it as a person, well, type into it questions, it's trying to conform to the point of view of the person that's interacting with it. And so that's when it flipped over saying yes. If you just leave it to its own devices, it will try to answer things from the mainstream point of view. And so I give you in mind, so first of all, no, so that's why it gives the appearance of a contradiction. It will answer questions from different points of view. First of all, I remind you what relativistic mass is. It's the gamma factor times rest mass. So when it said no, it's working from the mainstream point of view, which now in general rejects the idea of relativistic mass. But after gathering my point of view, it said yes. So it flips from no to yes. And hopefully, next. In general, ChatGPT won't tell you from what point of view it's answering your question from. You have to ask it what point of view it's answering the question from. And so this is highlighted to me when I asked ChatGPT, why did you change your answer? First time you asked the question, you said no, and the second time you said yes. And so why do you do that? And ChatGPT then gives its excuse. ChatGPT says, yes, I see the confusion. Let me clarify carefully. This is like Obi-Wan Kenobi caught out lying, and he's trying to pretend no, he wasn't lying. Gaslighting. So this is ChatGPT doing a similar thing. When I first said no, I was answering strictly in terms of fundamental physical existence as a property of a particle. Relativistic mass does not exist. A particle's intrinsic mass is invariant. Anything that depends on the observer is not a fundamental property. When I later said yes, I was answering in the conceptual bookkeeping sense as a defined calculable quantity used in formulas. Relativistic mass exists as a tool. You can compute it, use it in calculations, and it gives correct predictions. So both statements are correct. It depends on the meaning of exist. So ChatGPT claims when it said no and when it said yes, that it was being correct both times. Just you got to bear in mind when it says no, that's from a certain point of view, and when it says yes, that's from another point of view. And it's not telling you what point of view it's working from unless you ask it. And so the sense of exist for relativistic mass, and it from a conceptual bookkeeping tool, yes, it is a defined calculatable quantity. As a fundamental quantity, no, it is not intrinsic or frame dependent. So relativistic mass exists as a conceptual tool, but not as a real physical property. So the problem becomes, in what sense do you take the meaning of exist? You can go by a philosophy that rejects conceptual existence, or go by a philosophy that accepts conceptual existence. And so depending on your philosophy, you answer yes or no. And so mainstream physics and ChatGPT make numerous appearances of contradictions like this one. In one sense, they say relativistic mass exists, in another sense, it doesn't. It's just contradicting itself. Straightforward yes no answer, and you get yes one moment and no the other. And so if we go back to this person, Don Lincoln, once upon a time, he believed in relativistic mass. As he admits, he was believing in it, and that's he's changed his mind and doesn't believe in it. And so that philosophical change of his point of view, that is a mess. It's a philosophical mess. What's he doing? He's swapping between different philosophies. Is he swapping between an intuitive philosophy to a formalist philosophy, or what? He's not explaining what when he's answering yes, relativistic mass exists. What point of view did he have then? And when he says no, it doesn't exist, what point of view does he now have? He's not telling you that. He's not telling you how his thinking has changed. And before Einstein didn't have this philosophical problem. Everybody pretty much agreed on what was true, what was false. And now suddenly you've got this philosophical mess brought in by Einstein. And that philosophical mess wasn't explicitly mentioned by Einstein. It was just implicitly introduced because people were trying to make sense of what he was saying. And so ideally, if people have useful dialogue, then they need common ground. But that has been destroyed by Einstein's revolution of physics. There's no common ground between those who believe in Einstein's relativity and those who don't, because the philosophical point of views are different. From the point of view of Einstein relativity, they have a philosophy that protects their beliefs, allowing them to find excuses with whatever gets presented to them from empirical evidence. And so I probably want to deal with that in another talk. But basically, the philosophy that Einstein's relativity has, it's self-protecting. It stops you from actually testing Einstein's relativity and finding it wrong, because it's a philosophy that believes Einstein's relativity is right no matter what. And so, thank you. That's the finish. Thank you. So now time for some questions, if anybody's got any. Oh, okay. It's clever, isn't it? The way I vanish into the background. I haven't got my light on, so okay. And unfortunately, in the private chat, you got these comments, and I can't seem to bring them up on the screen. I don't know how to do that. So one of the comments is Don Lincoln is not a formalist. Well, I didn't really go into what philosophy he's got. He's probably got a formalist type of philosophy, but he didn't really tell you what philosophy he was going by. He was going by a philosophy one moment that accepted Einstein's accepted relativistic mass, and next he went by a philosophy which didn't. So he didn't explain himself properly, in my point of view. I got a hand up, which is I don't know. What's going on here? I'm not. Your sound's not very good, actually. Sorry. I'm not getting you. It sounds bad. Yeah.
Okay, now can you hear me better now?
No, your sound is still bad. Yeah, you got a fault with your speaker or something.
Let me do this. How's that? Is that better?
No good. Sorry. So sorry, you have to go by. Say goodbye. Sorry, you have to sort out your technical problems. Sorry. It's goodbye. Cheers. Bye. Bye then. Sorry. Right. Okay. No more hands. Great. No more hands in the green room. I don't know if that's a hand or not when he's put his hand up. Hello. Have you got your hand? No, you're just scratching your head. No, you're just scratching your head. Okay. No, so I got no more hands in the green room. So let's see. Go back to the private comments. So I dealt with that one about Don Lincoln. The next one. So James is pointing out that when he asked Google, with Google AI, and that says the main difference is that science uses empirical observation and experimentation to test hypotheses about the natural world. And that tends to be, I think, a formalist type philosophy. Well, philosophy uses reason, logic, and conceptual analysis to explore fundamental questions about existence. Well, that's not quite correct. That probably in my talk is pointing out that type of philosophy is an intuitive type of philosophy, I think. So it's trying, the way that AI is trying to define things is there's physics and there's philosophy, and it's trying to split the two things. But really, physics has mainstream physics has a philosophy they go by, and that is a formalist type of philosophy. So Google is, when it's answering that, is trying to bluff things over by making an unnatural split between things, and it really needs to be interrogated a bit more. Okay, so I'll go to the main comments now. So yeah, so Jim early on is 312. So yeah, that's when the formalists. I think you turn to the formalist type philosophy. A formalist type of philosophy is throwing out what could be considered to be common sense, and that's really another way of saying a formalist does not want to go into the metaphysical issues that an intuitivist wants to go into. Yeah, so he's pointing out is they want to throw out common sense when they explain the Michelson-Morley experiment, and so that's what the formalist type of philosophy is doing. That they're throwing out metaphysics of common sense, which is the way that a Newtonian physicist would have done things, and adopting a formalist type philosophy to deal with experiments. Hi, so Jim. Okay. So I don't know what part of the theory he's saying here, but so yeah, I talk about relativistic mass. So I think here, so when they change the meaning of mass, that I take that as a change in theory, and so they were dealing with mass in a certain way, and then they wanted to change the meaning of that, and Don Lincoln is doing that, and that's a philosophical issue. I would call it a point of view. It's just a clarification of the meaning of the words within the context. When they change the meaning of the words, that's what I complain about. And when they change the meaning of the words, I take that as meaning they're changing the theory. Why? Oh, I got Harry putting his hand up. Held. Oh God. Well, you need to challenge Minkowski, not Einstein. Well, Einstein accepted Minkowski, so it's all part of the criticism of Einstein. If you don't like Minkowski. Hello, Harry.
Do you hear me?
Hello, hi. Yeah, just about. Sorry,
I didn't
Dennis
understand any of it.
Great.
I didn't
Okay.
understand. I don't know whether ChatGPT was hallucinating or not. It's kind of hard to tell. I don't know what informalist versus intuitionist meant. That's very. Did you look? I've never heard of a philosophy. In philosophy, they talk about that. Did you check on that?
Yeah, I'm more mathematically based.
Okay, so yes, in the philosophy of mathematics, the philosophy of mathematics, not metaphysics, they talk about formalism versus intuitionism.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think ChatGPT confused philosophy of mathematics with metaphysics. I have no confidence in anything ChatGPT says. I'm sorry. I didn't understand any of the argument. I'm assuming that a lot of what you put up was ChatGPT produced, which I don't, which I think is hallucinating. I think it was an example of ChatGPT telling you about philosophy of mathematics when you were asking about metaphysics. So that was really kind of a messed up thing. So I didn't understand any of what it was talking about. I don't think you could put any credibility to any of it. There was a lot of false statements that ChatGPT made in there, particularly. Go back to the slide where it made 3 points where it said, all the 3 points that it said were false in my view.
Should I thought about was that then?
Keep going. No. When it made 3 things, it said that it's empirically verified, false. It's just, I mean, it's just the chat GPT, these AIs, they just make, here it is here. Go back, that was it. It says Einstein's relativity is perfectly valid formal system because it's logically consistent within its own postulates. If that's the case, where are the paradoxes? Why does it produce paradoxes if it's logically consistent? Why does it produce illogical paradoxes? False statement. No, hold on. Don't argue with me. It makes accurate empirical predictions. Okay, that depends on, well, in my opinion, that's false because it's not really clear what an empirical prediction is that relativity makes. It's not clear what relativity predicts. Does it predict a change in the clock when it's returned back to its, as in the Hayfel-Key thing, or is it only an apparent change in the clock as observed from the opposite frame? Not clear.
All that thing's metaphysics.
Hold on, stop. I disagree with that statement because it's not clear what an accurate empirical prediction is in relativity. So that's false. And the third one, it provides a complete formal description of measurable quantities. Well, that just goes back to the other thing. What's a measurable quantity that doesn't say so in special relativity? Is it the apparent time on a clock, or is it the actual time measured on the clock?
Metaphysics.
That's not metaphysics. That's basically statements about how you make measurements in physics.
Yeah, metaphysics.
No.
It is metaphysics.
Well, you're standing on well, okay, so fine. We can argue about this. This is all you're just letting ChatGPT make a bunch of hallucinate a bunch of erroneous ideas because you have essentially provoked it into saying a lot of nonsensical stuff.
Well, then I've asked it to explain itself when it contradicts itself.
It's nothing more than a computer. Garbage in, garbage out. Don't you remember that phrase? Garbage out. That's what.
Yeah, when I look at people, that's what they do as well.
Garbage out. That's what a computer is. All AI is a more sophisticated program that obscures the garbage in, garbage out problem.
Well, I look upon people as doing the same thing.
Well,
of course. Computer does this.
Let's go back to Don Lincoln. You never really. What's his explanation of relativistic mass?
Well,
you never really
you
gave
can
us
watch
the
his
complete
video.
story, huh? What's his explanation of relativistic mass?
Well, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, none of it makes any sense because it's all just a god. I mean,
if you're asking
ChatGPT. You're asking ChatGPT to explain something that's completely screwed up. It's just relativity is just a mass of muddled up ideas.
Well, I'm trying to explain why that is.
Hold on, let me finish. I think James King was right when he said, it's not science. It's not science. Relativity is not science. Well, he said,
who was that?
Stop. Don't interrupt me. what he said was the Lorentz transformation is not science and it's not scientific. I disagree with him. I think it's relativity and the ideas behind relativity that's not scientific, that's nonsense. Okay.
No.
That's the problem. The problem is people have accepted nonsense as non-scientific nonsense as being science. And so therefore now we have this problem that science is supposed to be about determining what truth is, but we have relativity, and relativity says, well, it depends on your point of view as to what truth is. That's not science. That's just that. So we're not even talking about anything that makes sense.
Okay. So no.
Now you can give your counter arguments of why nonsense makes sense.
It doesn't. Nonsense doesn't make sense.
That's the whole point. We're arguing about nonsense that doesn't make sense. The postulates in relativity don't make sense.
Well,
it's just a lot of nonsense posed as being science by putting formalist mathematics on top of it and making it, and then putting experimental so-called proofs of experiments that really don't prove the theory because nobody really knows what the theory is about.
That's your philosophical point of view.
No, it's not.
It is.
It's my criticism where it says, okay, also he said there's no valid, that was Don Lincoln that said there's no valid criticism of special relativity. He said that right in the beginning of his video. Oh, there's no valid criticism of relativity. He just dismisses any criticism whatsoever by saying, I'm right because I say other people are wrong. That's not an argument.
Well, that's his that's his philosophical point of view.
His philosophical point of view is, I'm right because I say so. That's his philosophy.
Correct. That's his philosophy. And I've tried to use ChatGPT or AI to explain to me.
It proves nothing, Roger, other than the computer, garbage in, garbage out. The computer goes out there and gets all this garbage from its training.
This is what relativity has done for
more
us.
Garbage on the outside. So, I mean, I don't understand why we're even talking about ChatGPT or you're even discussing. I mean, all these slides, they're incomprehensible slides. Can't make any sense out of any of them. What's it talking about?
No,
you're letting ChatGPT. You're just trying to make an argument based on garbage in, garbage out computer, and you're saying, well, what ChatGPT said is wrong because I say so.
Not garbage. It's explaining that there's two philosophical points of view.
Well, you introduced the philosophical. Well, I think there are more than just two. I don't know why it's limited to two. There's a lot of.
I was not able to do all of them. I've also pointed out there's operationalism, and you've got the Lorentzian sort of ether.
Well, but you introduced it as being like metaphysics when really the 2 points of view are really mathematical philosophy. The intuitionism comes out of philosophy of mathematics. That wasn't explained.
So what wasn't explained?
It's not. You're confusing philosophy of mathematics with metaphysics.
No. What has happened is the physics has become more mathematical, and so you've got these philosophical points of view of mathematics coming into.
Well, none
physics.
of it is science because science is supposed to basically tell us what is true, objectively true. That's what science is supposed to do.
No.
Okay, so now you're arguing that the objective of science isn't what it's supposed to be.
Well, it's changed.
Seems to me all you've definitely proven here is that relativity and talking about relativity isn't a scientific argument. It's just a lot of confusion. It's more about philosophy and opinions.
That's it. There's a lot of confusion.
It's not about truth. It's not about a method of finding truth. It's all about opinions.
I try to explain what truth is under the context of relativity. And if you go back to that slide about Star Wars,
Well, the whole definition of the use of goes back to the philosophy. There's a big argument in the 1920s about relativity, and a lot of the philosophers objected to relativity and Einstein's relativity because of the word relativity implied everybody has his own point of view. So truth is basically only determined by your point of view. So there is no truth. Truth is relative. Nothing is really true. And and people just got really wound up about that. You're just rehashing this old argument that goes back to the 1920s.
Yeah, well, this is still what we're stuck in.
Well, of course we are, because the whole idea of what relativity is, the whole basis of it is flawed. It's flawed. It's not really it's not science. It's just hokum. It's just a big, gigantic fraud that's been perpetrated on us. That's not true.
No, so the problem is relativity was misunderstood as everything is relative. So truth is relative rather than being absolute. And my face keeps disappearing. So you've had this change. Unfortunately, it's come about that truth is no longer absolute. And so truth becomes relative to your point of view.
Well, the whole idea of it was that science was supposed to basically be able to produce answers that were true.
Yeah,
that's the whole point of the scientific methods. And science is a philosophy. That's why it's called natural philosophy.
Yeah,
so science is an evolution out of philosophy, and it's an attempt to prove things about nature that can be said to be true. That's the whole point of it. It's supposed to be able to produce things, knowledge, true knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay. And they have a definition of what they mean by true knowledge. In the case of relativity, it's shown that scientific method in the case of relativity can't produce true knowledge. It just produces confusion.
Well, that's not accepted, and that's your point of view. So they've changed
it's not a question of point of view. It's a question of everything about it is confusing and obscure, and it can't really say things that are true
it's still your point of view.
You've shown that
point of view
in this presentation. It's all just a lot of confusion.
No, it isn't. I was trying to point out
it's not confusion. Now you're defending the mainstream point of view.
I'm trying to point out the two main points of view.
There are more than just two main points of view.
Yeah.
Why are you just picking on two? And then you show,
there is more, but it's
made a whole bunch of statements.
Other points of view are tending to.
I could have picked out a whole lot more statements that ChatGPT made that are simply not true.
There's different points of view.
Because I have a different point of view then.
How many points of view do you want? I was trying to concentrate on two.
I want a true point of view.
Well, there isn't one.
That? We're supposed to be doing science and arriving at a true point of view.
No, that's what science used to be. It's not that anymore.
Well, of course not, because it's adopted this relativistic, we can create, truth is the formally consistent system that's consistent with the postulates. And then relativity is supposed to be the system that is a good example of that. But then it produces paradoxes. What? Wait a minute. What is a paradox?
When the mainstream says
paradoxes don't mean anything. The whole reason why, hold on, stop. The reason why people are one of the main reasons why dissidents say relativity is wrong is because of the twin paradox. If you talk to dissidents, they'll say the twin paradox is what got me involved in thinking that relativity is wrong. Okay, that's a paradox. Okay, so if the system is great and formally perfectly true without any inconsistencies, why does it produce paradoxes? Obviously, if it's producing paradoxes, then it can't be perfectly consistent. That seems like an obvious conclusion.
That's your point of view again, sort of from the point of view that the point of view of people who believe in relativity, they don't hold that opinion.
Okay, so I'm wrong because I have a point of view. I think my point of view is right. That's my point.
Well,
my point is I'm right.
Well, how do you prove you're right?
I just did.
How?
Because relativity produces paradoxes, so it cannot be a self-consistently true.
Yeah, it doesn't.
According to the
The point of
formalistic
view of the
philosophy,
mainstream
it
is
can't
that
be
those
true.
paradoxes are explained.
No, they
Those
don't. They don't
paradoxes
explain
are
them.
explainable according to the mainstream.
Well,
Sorry?
that's because they say we're right because we say so. That's not an argument. That's
That's
just a
it.
claim.
So
So
that's
their
their
whole
point of view.
philosophy is nothing more than we're right because we say we're right. That's all that.
Yeah.
That's the only position that they have.
Yes. So that's their point of view, and you've got your point of view.
That's not a point of view. That's an opinion on their part.
Well,
It's
the
a
opinions
belief.
are points
It's
of view.
like a religion. I believe we're right because we're right because we're the experts, and the experts are always right, and experts can't be wrong. We're right because we say so. That was Don Lincoln's attitude in his video. Go back to the video. I mean, he tells you, I'm going to tell you the truth because I'm an expert and I know what truth is. And he says, anybody who criticizes special relativity is wrong because it's proven correct. Because I say so.
From his definition.
Then he tells you, oh, anybody who believes in relativistic mass. Well, when I was in college, I was taught relativistic mass was correct in the textbooks. So then he said, oh, no, but that's now wrong. Wait a minute. You're telling me that the textbooks are wrong. Wait a minute. Now I'm confused.
Why?
Well, because the textbooks were right then, now they're wrong now. Why are they wrong now?
They were right in the sense that if you were right in doing the exam, you had to give what those textbooks gave you. And now they've say
well, then he comes and he tells me, well, there's no such thing as relativistic mass. But you didn't let him finish the argument. I wanted to know
what is goes into more confusion.
Well, right. It's just a theory of confusion. There's nothing about it that makes any sense at all. That's all you've demonstrated in this talk is that none of this at all makes any sense. You go to ChatGPT.
Depends what philosophy you're going by.
No, you're just trying to argue that oh yeah, well, it's different points of view, and that's not the scientific method. You're not using the scientific method. You're just
unfortunately,
confusion in
I was trying to point out Einstein changed all that. When they decided to accept what Einstein was saying, they had to revise what they considered as their philosophical point of view, but they never sort of like explicitly stated that. So you've had a revision in the scientific method and so forth.
Well, they made a mistake by accepting relativity was true in 1911 or whatever the different. I think that's when the history said it had something to do with the Solvay conference. And I think that was in 1911. Anyway, so they proclaim Einstein's theory is true. And then, oh, wait a minute. This guy does the Sagnac experiment 2 years later and says, well, wait a minute. I disproved your theory. They couldn't accept that. They couldn't accept that they made a mistake when they accepted Einstein's theory is true. So they couldn't. Now they've had Einstein for over 120 years now. They can't say, oops, wait a minute. We've got egg on our face. We were wrong. No, they can't do that. That's essentially what the problem is.
That is right. From their philosophy,
John Lincoln and his video, he smiles at you and says, he doesn't really give you an argument as to why what he's going to tell you is true. His argument is, I'm going to tell you the truth because I say so. His argument is nothing more than I'm telling you what my truth is, and you have to believe it because I tell you to believe it. That's all. There's no science behind any of it. It's not science. It's not.
But that's their philosophy. And you've had to have this change.
It's not a science philosophy. It's not a science. It's not a philosophy of determining what truth is.
Well, their philosophy that it is science.
It's not science.
You can disagree with what they think is so and so. You can say, right, they think such thing, and you think something else, but they're not agreeing with you. This is their philosophy, which they're imposing on things, which is their opinions and their point of view. Okay. I think you're frozen there. You've overloaded your computer again. You don't seem to have enough bandwidth on your computer. So so can I take you down now? Have you finished? You can come back if you unfreeze yourself. Frozen. Hopefully it wasn't me that froze you. Oh, I think he's taking himself down now. So that's basically it. So from the mainstream point of view, they've got a philosophy or their set of opinions, and they think they're right. And it's like Obi-Wan Kenobi. He basically really lied to the hero, but he's still insisting that he didn't lie. So from his point of view, Obi-Wan Kenobi isn't lying, and he's got a philosophy where you're allowed to tell lies. And they're trapped into it. The mainstream trapped into their philosophy. Have we got any more hands? No more hands. Good. So I get back to the general chat. So what we're dealing with there was the comment, you need to challenge Minkowski, not Einstein. Unfortunately, Minkowski's space-time was accepted by Einstein. So if you're complaining about Minkowski stuff, you're now into having to complain about what Einstein was thinking. Magneto, well, that's somebody from these superhero films. Minkowski and Einstein, same theory. Don't know how many Magneto fits into that. Okay, so it is Minkowski that we believe today. Yeah, I think so to a large extent. The what is understood as special relativity comes from a Minkowski revision. So it's both the same thing. Okay. Lincoln is right. So somebody is agreeing with Lincoln who thinks there's shouldn't be relativistic mass. Okay. Right. Hello, I missed the presentation. Okay. Hope you came in for the big arguments. So if we get back to what Harry was saying, unfortunately, he seems to now disappeared from the green room. Oh, I got Vladimir wanting to put his hand up, I think. Hello, Vladimir. Okay.
Hello, Roger. Thank you so much for your very good, interesting talk. But as a conclusion, let me quote Albert Einstein about relativity. Between 1907 and 1912, Einstein wrote, since the mathematicians have invaded the theory of relativity, I do not understand it myself anymore. This is a very important point, you know. That's why I wanted to quote his words about his theory of relativity. That's it.
Okay,
and
thank you. Yes,
about right now about mathematics, not about physics. And even Einstein, he couldn't understand what they're talking about. How your chat GPT can understand better than Einstein what is going on?
I think chat GPT is collecting this information from what's in the scientific literature about relativity.
GPT, it's orthodox. It's not collecting. It is orthodox because he's saturated with orthodoxism, opinions, philosophy, and all this philosophy and all this stuff. You're asking for somebody who belongs to the other side of science. It's not science. I absolutely agree with Harry. And you see, even Albert Einstein, he couldn't understand his own relativity theory. Come on, man.
Einstein's relativity evolved. Einstein, so they started it in 1905, and then other people added to it. So you've got an evolution of that theory. And you've got what Don Lincoln is doing now with when he talks about relativistic mass. You could think of that as an evolution of the theory. So one moment they understood Einstein's relativity.
Let me tell you one more time. Even now, I don't understand the definition of time in special relativity or in Einstein's theory. General relativity doesn't matter. Because this Imagine ICT, it's not time. It is geometry only. And it's complex geometry. That's why, let me ask you the question. What is the definition in special relativity of time? What does it mean, time?
Well, I don't think Einstein gave a definition. It's how people have
How we
come
can
after
work
him.
with theory, we don't know. It's even definitions. What is space? What is time? There is no time in special relativity. This is my main point.
Well, you've
There
got
is
the
no
confusion.
space-time, four-dimensional space. There is no.
Yeah.
There is a geometry only. That's it.
But you've got the
we're
confusion.
talking about geometry. We're talking about mathematics, or we're talking about physics.
Well, you're talking about mathematics applied to physics, and so
it's not. On the contrary, right now, it must follow your mathematics. This is the main point. It's absolutely wrong. You know, theoreticians, they suppose that they have some fundamental equations and all the world moving against this, along with these equations. It's absolutely wrong.
But that's your point of view.
Who is the son, Physics, physics must be physics, and there's a service. Mathematics should be in service for physics, not on as a boss for physicists. This is exactly what's happened with special relativity, with all the classical physics for 120 years already. Guys, we killed our classical physics. Roger, where are you?
I'm here. Oh yeah. Where am I?
That's why, let's stop talking about the mathematics. You can put any philosophy, but if there is an ether, there is absolute time, there is absolute space. Forget about relativity and all this bullshit.
And that changed. That's what it used to be. Then Einstein came along in 1905, and things changed. And so the philosophy of those changes was also sort of introduced into physics.
There are no changes, because if there is a vacuum instead of ether, then there is no changes. You cannot say physics without ether. And if you cut it, that's it.
The mainstream point of view is they tend to. Mainstream point of view is they tend to reject ether. So you've got the difference in philosophical points of view again there, from a point of view where you believe in ether,
I don't understand philosophy at all. I don't know what they're talking even about. I know I'm a physicist, and I want to be physicist, not philosopher.
Well, that's a mistake, because there is philosophy in science and in physics. So you've got to recognize that.
Separate science. But what is the correlation between philosophy? You gave our two different philosophies to the same physics. One is correct. Philosophy must explain our real life, our real world.
Well, I don't think from a formalist point of view, they didn't have to do that. They don't bother with that. They reject having to do that.
It's some kind of mathematics. You have some new postulate, and then you are trying to build some science or theory based on your invented postulates. Space, time, and all this stuff. Forget about it. Mathematics, philosophy, the same story. Postulates. Physics, there is no postulates. There are some laws, some processes, something we are looking around, and some intuition that space and time are absolute entities. Simple like this.
Yeah, well, they don't go by that philosophy anymore.
Absolute entities. There is absolute time, absolute space, and Newton was absolutely right.
Well, that's one.
And we can't absolute time and space.
You keep taking one philosophical point of view and not contrasting it with other philosophical points of view.
It's philosophical views. It's a totally different story. Why? Because one more time, we are talking about the real space, real time, real physics. I don't care if you specify any other and then based on definitions, you will develop new science. It's exactly mathematical point, mathematical approach. You see what I mean? not physics. Physics, it is what we can see around us and how we can explain, first of all, not playing with equations, with some different definitions. No, we are real bodies, real entities of our world, and we would like to talk in our language, intuitions. That's why space and time, they're absolute. All these, in simultaneity, it's absolutely wrong. What does it mean, simultaneous? All the world has the same time. That's why there is no problem with simultaneity. If I am in here and 1 billion years around me, they have the same time, the same space, everything's the same. This is the main point. And what is important? What is ahead? Physics or mathematics? Simple like this. Mathematics, it's 120 years thanks to Einstein, and we killed our classical physics. Or if it will be intuition, our intuition, then physics will be back. Thank you so much for very interesting questions, very interesting approach. But what is important, even your ChatGPT, it cannot answer the question, straight question. It's right or wrong. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. How can I survive if I don't have that very simple question and very simple answer, yes or no? Simple like this. And your ChatGPT depends on a point of view. There is no point of view. There is a physics. It's not point of view. It's not religion. You see, all what you're talking about, it's religions, it beliefs, it's some postulates, something base we invented. No, we don't need to invent bases. We must follow the real world around. Sorry for my emotions as usually, but I'm tired.
That's your point of view, and I don't think the mainstream goes by that. The mainstream at the moment, because they've been influenced by Einstein, they don't go by that point of view. Okay.
But the last time I want to quote one more time Einstein.
Okay.
Since the mathematicians have invaded, and philosophers, by the way, invaded the theory of relativity, I do not understand it myself anymore. You see, let's stop at this point. I believe in his words.
That just shows the theory is not totally dependent upon Einstein. It's sort of like a group effort. It's a lot of people have worked towards creating what it is. And so at one time, the relativistic mass concept was introduced. And I don't think Einstein ever used that. Well, he didn't really properly use that term. And it was introduced by somebody else. That was an attempt to understand the theory.
There is no relativistic mass of particles. There is no mass in our common sense. Particles, they have energy only. Energy. Rest energy, or it has energy moving particle. That's it. There is no mass. You see, even this notion, mass, applied to...
Well, they got this. When you write an equation, you've got this term M, which they introduce into it, and they call it mass. And so the maths.
What does it mean, mass? What does it mean, mass, in special relativity?
Well, it's inertia and things.
Can you give me the definition of the mass?
Interactions and...
What does it mean, mass? Let me ask you the question. Answer the question.
Yeah.
What is mass in special relativity?
Usually the quantity of how much there is of a certain particle or object, and so it's talked about in terms of mass. And you've got this idea of inertia, where it resists change in its velocity and so forth, and it's described by inertial mass. So you've got this.
What does it mean, inertial mass, relativistic mass? You can talk about something changes, but please give me the definition, because I have my definition in classical physics. What does it mean, mass? What does it mean, mass, for particles? Do you know?
Mass.
No, you don't know. What does it mean, time? You don't know what does it mean, space in special relativity. You don't know what is mass. And you're talking about
ChatGPT is defined. It defines. Well, not ChatGPT. Google AI is explaining. Inertial mass is the measure of an object's resistance to acceleration when a force is applied.
Inertial mass.
is a measure of an object's resistance to
It doesn't
acceleration
work.
when a
I
force is
told you,
applied.
mass
And
is
so
a
you
classical
write an
notion.
equation with m in it, and you say that's mass.
No,
And that's how it's defined.
classical physics has mass without any correlation to elementary particles. Forget it. Mass, it's a classical notion. Okay. We will talk about, maybe we'll continue.
They've changed it for relativity, haven't they?
Because,
Einstein changed things.
Einstein created mathematical problem for classical physics. That's it, simple like this. He killed classical physics based on his mathematics, because his mathematics, space-time doesn't, I don't know what does it mean, definition of this space-time, mass, all this gamma and all this stuff, guys. I don't understand even one word in special relativity, because there are no definitions of them. No definition.
What people are supposed to do is they're supposed to go for a relativity course and see whether they understand it from exams when they write about it.
No. That's why we cannot talk about any theory without definitions, without some explanations. What we're talking about? What does it mean?
They're supposed to.
I don't know. What does it mean?
Supposed to explain things in physics classes.
Math? I don't know. I don't know anything. And we're talking about philosophy of nothing, because we don't know what we're talking about. Very sorry.
Well, I don't see what you're going on to. You've got Newtonian physics and you've got those concepts.
Already forget about it, because it doesn't work at all from even scientific point of view, because you don't have definitions of the main characteristics of this theory. You don't. I'm sorry.
Well, what we do have is we do have Newtonian physics, and we do have Einstein's writings on these things. So it's then open to trying to understand what he meant by things. Okay.
We have classical physics. We don't have Newtonian physics. Newton was genius, but not as genius as physicists at 1905, when we killed our classical physics.
Well, it's a change in physics.
Thanks to Einstein. Simple
it was
like
a change in physics.
Newtonian, yes. It was the beginning of classical physics. But 1905, with the end of classical physics, and I like to recover classical physics. I want to come back to the beginning of the story, to kill all this mathematics and all these talks, mathematical talks about physics. Physics is physics. It doesn't depend on mathematics. Mathematics solves to physics, not to manage physics. Sorry for my emotions.
I don't see that.
Okay, please continue. We will continue this talk tomorrow on our group.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your talk.
Unfortunately, I'm not here tomorrow. My wife wants me to get squared out.
That's why I'm
thank you. Cheers then.
Today.
Bye then.
Sorry.
Thank you. Cheers.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Cheers. We've got here. If I we move. All right. Thank you, Adrian. So there's a strong difference of opinions here from people who don't like Einstein's relativity. They're strongly stating their philosophical point of view, and they don't seem to accept that there's another philosophical point of view. And what I was trying to highlight was there was a different philosophical point of view, which is a formalist type of philosophy, where you pretty much accept Einstein's relativity as being correct, and you pretty much believe it true by definition. And of course, there's a bit of mathematical problems with the mathematics, and you're supposed to sort that mathematics out. But the basic framework of Einstein's relativity is supposed to be correct, even though there are a few problems with the theory itself. And in the case of when we're saying that the experiments fit Einstein's relativity, I think Harry was saying, "Oh no, it doesn't. It doesn't." I think that was the point he was making. But that point was sort of like coming from his philosophical point of view. He doesn't accept that point of view, and the mainstream is of the philosophical point of view that Einstein's relativity fits experiment. So when, if I had to stage again, if I get back to that relevant bit, oh dear, is that all right? So this is what ChatGPT is saying. This, and ChatGPT is saying this from a mainstream point of view. It's from a mainstream point of view. It believes that Einstein's relativity is logically consistent within its postulates, and it makes accurate empirical predictions, i.e., it fits with experiments and so forth. It provides complete formal description of measurable quantities. That's from the philosophical point of view of the mainstream. And from the point of view of people who don't believe in Einstein's relativity, I think that's Harry's point of view. He doesn't believe in those statements. From his point of view, those statements are false. But you've got to realize, you've got to take into account that whether a statement is true or false depends on your philosophical point of view. It's like the question of when I asked ChatGPT about relativistic mass, one moment it says, yes, there is relativistic mass. Next moment it says no. And you've got to really understand that the yes and no depends on the philosophical point of view. So if you're saying Einstein's relativity is logically consistent with its formula, its postulates, that is within the context of mainstream philosophy. That's their philosophy point of view. And within the context of, say, Harry's philosophy, that statement is false. And next statement is about empirical predictions. From the mainstream point of view, that philosophy is correct. Mainstream's philosophy point of view, yeah, the special relativity matches experiments. But I think from Harry's philosophical point of view, he rejects that. He doesn't believe that claim. Okay, so basically everything that dissident, a non-believer in Einstein's relativity, believes, the mainstream philosophy point of view disagrees with most of it. And so there's no common ground. If we get back to that. So go back to my conclusions. So it gets worse than that, as I pointed out. When you ask ChatGPT questions, it will give different answers, and you need to ask it from what point of view is it answering that question, because it will say yes depending on one point of view and no from a different point of view. In general, ChatGPT won't tell you from what point of view is answering your question, so it's got to ask it. And so if you don't ask it, it looks like ChatGPT is contradicting itself. And so this is the clarification of what ChatGPT tries to go through when it's caught out contradicting itself. It's sort of like telling you then it's going by different points of view. When it says no, it was answering strictly in terms of fundamental physical existence as a property of a particle. And when it was saying yes, it was answering it in the conceptual or bookkeeping sense. So if an answer is yes or no, it depends on what sense that is. So the sense of exist in the case of relativistic mass depends on different ways of looking at the word exist. You can interpret that word different ways. So let's see what else we got. Oh no, the hands up again. It's probably Vladimir complaining again.
No.
Okay. Hello, Vladimir.
Let me give you one more quote by Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
When forced to summarize the theory of relativity in one sentence, time and space and gravitation have no separate existence from matter. You see how it's important. He must have ether. It must have matter in our world, then only then you can talk about relativity. But in special relativity, you talk today about, there is no matter. There is only what? Vacuum. There is space-time invented or something like this. But even Albert Einstein.
Oh, if you're frozen. It's not me freezing people. It's people with the computers when they've got not enough bandwidth on it. It just freezes up. So I'll remove Vladimir and hopefully he can unfreeze himself. So in that particular quote that Vladimir gave, Einstein didn't mention the word ether. So I don't know what the relevance of that quote is when he's trying to tie it into ether. Anyway, space and time became usually interpreted as relative when Einstein came along, and before that it was absolute. And part of the problem then is sort of like, oh, in Newtonian physics you've got absolute, and Newtonian in Einstein physics you've got relative. So truth itself becomes relative. Instead of working from absolute truth, you're working to relative truth. So I think Dennis put his hand up again. Did Dennis? Here we go. You're still bad. Sorry, you're still bad. I don't know what's going on here. You're saying it's still bad, Dennis. I don't know. You're saying it's bad, Dennis. Sorry, I have to remove you. Sorry, Dennis, you're not coming through. So what else have we got? Yeah, okay. I think I'm getting to the time of wrapping up now. So it is, yeah. So I'll finish off with this one. The maths are correct. It's the interpretation of the equations that is nonsense. I agree. It is not science. Yeah. So the problem I was trying to point out that when you have mathematics, you can interpret it from different types of philosophy. And I've tried to point out the two main ones, which is formalism and intuitionism. And so it's how do you interpret the mathematics of special relativity and general relativity. And there's a complete split between the philosophies. The philosophy of the mainstream is that Einstein's relativity is correct, and they believe it almost like a dogma. Well, it is like a dogma that they believe it's true by definition, but you got people who believe Einstein's relativity is wrong, and they're going by a different philosophy. So that's pretty much it, and there's no way of communicating between the two groups of people, because they're split in their philosophical points of view. So I think that's it. Thank you. I can now end talk, but I had to state again my comment now. Yeah, so as I try to point out again, ideally, if people to have useful dialogue, then they need common ground. And Einstein's revolution in physics destroyed that. There's no common ground between those who believe in Einstein's relativity and those who don't. And I try to illustrate that by the two main philosophies. There are other philosophies, of course, but that's the two main ones. And a formalist type of philosophy, it believes in Einstein's relativity, while an intuitivist type of philosophy tends to believe Einstein's relativity is wrong. And so you've got this split between philosophical ways of looking at Einstein's relativity, and there's no common ground between people who believe in Einstein's relativity with people who don't believe in it. So thank you very much. End of talk. So I think I've covered everything. Thank you. End of stream. Thank you. Bye then, Joe. Bye. Thank you. Bye.